Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Wellness by Design today. I'm really excited about my guest because we're going to be talking about growing your own food and gardening, and it's feeling very spring-like now for us in North America. So a lot of us are thinking about gardening. So I'm really delighted to welcome Katie Oglesby. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Well, I grew up, my parents were British, and so gardening was kind of a big thing in our family. I've kind of been used to the idea of growing some food, but a lot of people haven't, and you're really going to show us that it's not as hard as people may think, and you can really get a lot in a small space. So I'm going to tell everyone, read your bio so everyone knows about you. So as a garden designer and a certified health coach, Katie's specialty is designing beautiful gardens that help her clients and their families reach their health and lifestyle goals. Katie believes that gardens truly are a way to heal your body, clear your mind, nourish your soul, and love your life. Katie offers garden designs, coaching services, and turnkey garden installations. Katie, I love what you said there because it's not just about the food and growing food, but it's also about being outdoors and getting your hands into the dirt and smelling the dirt and grounding, all those different things. So it's all encompassing,
Mhm.
really. It's the whole package. So how did your health coach as well as a gardener, like let's put all that together. How did you get to that spot?
Yes. So several years ago, my husband and I had been gardening for a while, and I suffered a health crisis,
Mm.
and which led to I had an anaphylactic reaction while getting my hair colored, which kind of opened the door for digest one issue after another. And after I guess trying to navigate the medical system and failing to get any type of relief for these symptoms, I remember it was winter and I started binge watching food documentaries and documentaries about our food system because of my chemical allergies. And one weekend where I sat there, it used to be Food Matters TV back then, and it was like, Katie, your garden is healthy, but your soil is depleted. And I really had lost touch of, even though I was a gardener, like really nourishing myself from many standpoints, right? It's not even just the food, but it's the connection, it's our lifestyle habits, it was my beauty product, it was everything combined, and it all came to a head. So that spring, I kind of rolled up my sleeves and thought, if it's one thing that I can change or that I have control over, it's how I nourish myself. And that's where the garden really came back into play. And I approached it with some different intentions. I went and got my health coaching certification, and I really used that garden as a tool to reclaim my health and really kind of flipped my life upside down. When it comes to, even though I was a gardener, my food choices probably still weren't ideal, products I was using were not ideal, and they, it all came to a head, and that's what changed the trajectory of my life. So now I help people understand, the quality of food you're eating, how growing your own food helps, like you said, not just eating it, but connecting outside, grounding, fresh air. There's so much more to it that really can impact our lives.
Oh my goodness, what an amazing story. We all come to this space with our own challenges, right? And really
Mhm,
understanding that there's not going to be a pill that's going to
mhm.
fix this, but it requires us to make these lifestyle changes. But it's really interesting how you came at it from gardening right away. Like some people might see that kind of down the road. Well, it's expensive to buy organic food, so maybe I should grow
Yeah.
my own. But you started with that, which is really, really interesting. Also interesting that it was what triggered your response was hair dyes.
hmm
Wow.
So, yeah, come to find out, there's a chemical. I have a lot of gray hair actually, and I've been coloring my hair for a long time. And there's a chemical that is known to cause severe anaphylaxis. And it was really an eye-opening experience because when you're sitting there and I'm like, and I had an EpiPen on me. I had bee allergies, so thankfully I had that on me. But even the little bit of denial, like, is this really happening to me. And even just navigating the medical system of for what I believed had caused some of my issues, and eventually it did come out and there was some support system there, but it really was truly a blessing in disguise because it changed my life. But we don't realize the toxicity levels, how our bodies get to a certain point where we can't take anymore, and that's what my body was telling me: enough is enough.
Mhm.
So that was the lesson in that.
Well, I used to dye my hair too, and I just kind of decided, well, I'm doing all these other things, and so why am I still putting these chemicals on my hair? So I just stopped. But you can see I'm like kind of grayish, but you obviously you're not gray, so you've just found a different product or probably a
Hmm.
more organic product that still allows you to dye your hair, so you don't have to do what I'm doing, everybody.
That's true. I did find a plant-based product. It's not perfect and it's not as effective, but it's safer for me. And I've had no reaction issues and we tested it. And so there are other options out there. And again, like you said, it's not perfect, but I'll take my health
Yeah.
over dyed hair any day.
A lot of people may not realize that we are still absorbing through our
Mhm.
skin is our biggest, probably, well, not as big as our small intestine, but it's a very big absorption field. What we put
Mhm.
on our skin goes into our body. Like, we don't wear, but there's medical patches,
Yeah.
so we know that's an accepted way to
Hmm.
get things into our body. So putting what you put on your head can get into your body as well.
It matters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makeup, all of those things. We put on so many products. But anyway, let's get back to the gardening. So you started gardening, and now you've made this your work, your life's work to help other people, because obviously you're very passionate about helping people with a garden. So what would you say to people who say, I don't have a clue about how to garden? How would you get started with someone like that?
I think there's a few easy ways to start, and part of gardening is being a lifelong learner. So accept the fact up front, we're going to have little failures, we're going to have little setbacks, and that's how you learn. But some of the easiest things to grow that have the most impact for our health are greens. Whether you have a tray of microgreens in your kitchen, which are very easy to grow, don't require any space, or even a small salad or herb garden. Those are the two things that are more of an entry level kind of approach to take for gardening. Is salad greens are very forgiving and herbs are good. So I think when we think of herbs, it's replacing the some of those spices that are in the spice aisle, right? We don't realize some of the garbage that's in them. So changing that flavor profile and really taking those herbs and their medicinal properties and bringing them into our meals is one small step you can take, right, to improving your health. And then having fresh salad greens, I would say every day, is also a benefit. I mean, we don't realize. So here in the US, our salad greens, like 98% are grown in two places, California and Arizona. So they're traveling on average 1,200 miles to most of us. So the nutritional density is going down. They're being packaged. Many have preservatives on them. And it's really not necessary because they're one of the easiest things that you can grow, even a portion, depending on where you live, of the year. They actually prefer it kind of cool, which gives you even kind of a longer option to grow them. So I think that's something that people can do in a small space. You can do it in a container, on a raised bed. You can even bring a salad bowl inside with a little grow light. Like there's a lot of options to add one meal from that you can grow yourself.
Mm. And before you and I started recording, we were talking, you were telling me about you got a little space where you grew salads or salad greens for you and your husband for like a big, from April until when? October, November?
Till November, yes. So we have raised bed gardens and we in-ground garden, but we have a little cold frame. So it's a little, little box with a little lid on it. And so it's 4 by 4. So that's 16 square feet. And I planted them. Well, this was last year. I ran the little trial in February. So the whole month of April, we were able to eat salad greens. I have a salad every day, my husband and I, for over a month. And I'd say that most people can accommodate a 16-foot square section. And you can, once those greens are done, you can add a fresh layer of compost and reseed again. It's a really economical way. Seeds are economical to purchase. You don't have to purchase any plants. They actually prefer to be direct sown. And it's just a small way to start, getting your hands dirty and growing some of your own food.
And you said you planted it in February.
I did. I planted it in February. Last year's a little bit warmer than this year. So this year we planted them about a week ago. Um, but it stays warmer in those little cold frames. So I add a fresh layer of compost. Things like spinach will grow slowly, even at 25 degrees. Carrots will grow slowly or even over winter. And you can eat carrot greens too. So really just focusing on those cooler tolerant plants and just learning what likes to grow when, you really be able to maximize your seasons.
Mm. Yeah, and yeah, so that's just a small area, and you could just make it yourself. Like if you got an old, like the top of it needs to be like glass or plexiglass, something like that, just to
Hmm.
kind of keep the heat in. Do you put any
Hmm.
styrofoam or anything? Well, maybe styrofoam's not the best thing, but do you insulate it at all?
Well, you could. So my raised beds, I did not insulate, but a lot of people use straw bales. You
Yeah.
could use any other type of thing to kind of insulate it. You could put an old window on top of a container and insulate it. I mean, there's lots of economic ways that you can get creative just to
Mm-hmm.
get that going. Put that on a week or two ahead of planting, let it get warmed up in there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of different options. People use cattle troughs, pots. I mean, you can get even a small makeshift little raised bed with a window on top would work.
And I should say that you're in Wisconsin. It's not like you're down
Yeah.
south somewhere. I'm in Newfoundland, but I do have a friend who lives in Cape Breton on Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia. So, pretty close to Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And he grows greens. I'm not sure if he's still doing it, but for a while anyway, he was growing greens in a cold frame year round, and he was supplying greens to restaurants in the area. So even in a climate like we've got, you could do this year round potentially, right? So it's really exciting
Yes.
to know that. But you also mentioned you could just grow them in your house as well.
Hmm. There grow lights have come a long way. There's small ones. They're inexpensive. You can buy a little one that clips onto your table for $30 now. It has little wands, and so it's become a lot easier, I would say, to bring that concept inside.
I've got this little, I guess it's maybe 1 foot by 2 feet, something like that, or maybe not quite that big, plastic thing over top, and it's got the light that fits in the plastic. And then I can just pop stuff in there and grow it in there and just plug it in anywhere. It hardly takes up any space, and it is a great way to grow year round. And another thing you mentioned there about the herbs, they're not just for flavor, right? So herbs really pack a big punch for in terms of health. Can you share anything about those with us?
Yeah, so I think that's another thing when we're growing herbs, not only are they packing a lot of nutritional benefits, medicinal benefits, it's something where you can save those for later too, even if you can't grow them your own. Think about drying them for teas. So you're able to dry them for teas, for spices. I actually will vacuum seal my basil because I like it green and freeze it and it will stay green, which is kind of fun to have in the winter when you pull it out. And so not only are we changing kind of that flavor profile, but a lot of them have, you know, support our digestive system. Peppermint is great for things like that. And really seeing which herbs benefit you for certain things and making sure that you have those in the garden. Depending on what your health goals are, you can really hone in and make sure that you're growing the right things to support you. And then you have the option to preserve them for later.
Cilantro is great for detox, right?
Of course, cilantro is great for detox, and that actually prefers it relatively cool. So that's, it's fun to separate out your plants. You don't have everything coming at once. So here we have our cilantro in spring and fall heavily. So it gives me an opportunity to really use it up. I can save it for in the summer for our tacos when it's not ideal for growing. But then I have my basil and parsley and rosemary and all those other fun herbs to use in between. So really thinking big about how you can kind of maximize year round which herbs grow best when. So you're really getting the value of all of them.
Mm. So we've talked about like a smaller cold frame. What about like something a little bit bigger? How would someone go about making a bigger, like it could be a raised bed, or if they even just in ground? What do you suggest about those?
So as far as season extensions for bigger, you could easily, we've done it before. If you're in ground, we've taken just some PVC pipe and we've made little hoops and I've put plastic over it and used, logs or whatever. And you can grow quite a bit in that plastic. So that's an option. You can also do that in your raised bed by making a makeshift hoop. It's economical, it's clear plastic, and you can use it from year to year. So those have been some other ways we've extended the season, and it's cheaper than maybe possibly building a cold frame. Key to either one is just making sure you get that up a few weeks ahead of time before you're going to plant. Let that ground warm up. I always add a fresh layer of compost because I want to make sure that I'm starting those plants out with a healthy medium that they're growing in, since I know the last crop probably took quite a bit out of that soil. So that's really something to be conscientious about. Is I always tell people, you feed your plants like you feed your family. So making sure that you're supporting them from the get-go is really important also when you go to plant any time of the year.
Okay, and what do you suggest for building the soil? Like if someone was starting from scratch with making whether it's a cold frame or another garden bed, what do you
Mhm.
suggest for composition of the soil?
So that a little bit depends on your location. Like in the South, they use a little bit of a different growing medium than I would personally use here. You want to make sure that it's a composition where you have a little bit of soil, some sand, and some compost. A lot of people do the 30-30-30 mix. Here, the topsoil is being stripped so much, it's full of weed seed. So I actually grow in a straight compost blend here, just because it works well for me. But that's something where locally I would ask for people to search what people are using around you, what landscape companies are using, and what gardeners are using. A lot of places will have local blends that really will thrive in your area.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a really good point you made there that all everywhere we've got people we can consult, right? We've got local
Mhm.
resources. So use this for inspiration, but talk to local people to find out what works best where you are. So
Mhm.
we talked about uh, the garden, but what about some plants may need to be started inside, or what do you suggest with that?
Yeah, so here in Wisconsin, our growing season is obviously short. So there's peppers, tomatoes, eggplant. There's a lot of things that I'm starting ahead of time to make sure that they can have time to come full term. And there's other things that prefer to be started by seed. So that's one of the things where you can do a quick Google search and write down every month of the year and write down your high temperature and your low temperature. And that will kind of tell you what season you're in and when to plant certain things. So that is something I would never direct sow tomato plants or pepper plants. I would always start those ahead of time,
Mhm.
anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks ahead of your last frost date.
And I suppose if anyone felt intimidated by that, you can always buy starter plants as well. If you're just kind of, this is your very first year and feeling like there's a lot to think about, or maybe you've missed the start date already, you could
Mhm.
always buy starter plants. Any great resources? Like I've looked at the Farmer's Almanac online, and that had some stuff for our particular growing season, and also like a really great download of when to plant for my area. Do you know of any other resources like that?
So Kellogg, I think it's Kellogg. Is it Kellogg Gardens? They have like a lot of like zone type things where you figure out your zone, and they'll have a lot of to do lists for each month. And even a lot of the seed companies, like if you're in the South, So True Seed has great resources on their blog that'll tell you what to start when, depending on where you live. So
Hmm.
that's another recommendation when you're sourcing seeds, looking for companies that are reputable, or two that are growing seeds in your area. That way you know that those you're getting varieties that will set you up for success. And then
Hmm.
again, if you're looking for plants because you missed that time or you weren't confident, your farmers market is a great place to buy plants because they're starting things that they know grow well in your area also.
Great idea. Great idea. And what about, so things are growing and then you're harvesting. Now, what I find is that like everything kind of comes at once, and sometimes it's hard to like eat everything when it all is ready at the same time. So, what about preserving things? How do you go about doing that?
So there I have two answers to that question. Once you get going, succession planting is really kind of something everybody should adopt. So even like in Wisconsin, we get zucchini all at once. They say that's the joke. You'll find people sticking it in your car, right? And green beans all come at once. So being thoughtful, like if you say you have a 20-foot row, start 10 feet now and wait 3 weeks and start another 10 feet. Because it's going to buy you a little time of not getting sick of it and give you time to preserve. So when it comes to preservation, even though things do come at the same time, I always make it a weekly ritual. On Sundays, I do my harvest and I set aside what I'm going to eat for the week and what I need to preserve for later. And so there's many options between canning, freezing, dehydrating. It really depends on your like what you prefer and what your family's goals are as far as how you want to eat certain things. But that's I try to make it more of a weekly ritual so you don't get everything at once and you're like, what am I going
Mhm.
to do with all these tomatoes and beans?
Mhm. Would you say that gardening is what's the number one benefit? Let's say the top three benefits of growing your own.
So growing your own, I would say the nutritional benefits are higher because you're eating them fresh. They're being picked. They're not being handled. You're picking them when they're ripe versus maybe when they're not quite ripe because it has to travel. I would
Mm,
say the fact that you can control what's on your food, right? You know exactly how you've grown your food. And growing organically, as Mother Nature intended, is not as hard as you think. It's just a matter of being proactive and not reactive in the garden. And the third thing is the connection. We've lost the connection to our food, how our food is grown, and making it a family affair. So being able to be outside, enjoying nature, grounding. It is good for us to play in the dirt. We have all these allergy issues, that are becoming more and more prevalent. And so that is really important. And I think as a family, even not only to be outside in the garden, but bringing it back into the kitchen and taking that step and learning to try new foods, cook together. I think that's a really important thing that we've kind of lost track of.
and so fun for kids to grow up learning that you can grow food. Food just doesn't come from a store, right?
Yeah.
We can grow our own food. This is not about growing food, but there's also a lot of food you can find by foraging around as well. And I got into that a little bit last year, did a couple of little workshops on foraging, and that was a lot of fun too, to understand that there's food around in nature as
Mhm.
well that you can find and eat and bring home to your family. And if it hasn't been sprayed, then you know that's organic as well. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so you mentioned there about it was when you were talking about the second benefit. You said, oh goodness, should have written it down.
That's okay. Hold on. Let's think here. So, talked about the nutritional benefits. Oh, and we talked about so you know how you're taking care of them, being proactive and reactive, growing
Yes,
organically.
proactive and reactive. What do you mean by proactive and reactive? Thank you for remembering that.
Yeah. Yes, of course. So one of the things is so like I said before, feeding our plants like we feed our family. So are you starting this plant off in the most nutrient dense environment? Because the stronger the plant is, the better ability it has to fight pests and disease. We're not going to get around pests and disease. You're not going to get around it conventionally or organically. But the making sure that plant's immune system is strong from the
Mm,
get-go is going to set it up for success. And plants' immune systems aren't like ours. Once you get a disease, it becomes more of a management type process. So you can manage it and still eat from it, but really when you're out in the garden, paying attention to your plants, if you see that there's a problem, addressing it right away is one of the things that I say you can get ahead of it. You're always going to have something in the garden, and every year Mother Nature is going to give you something new to tackle. But I
mhm.
think taking the time to observe what's growing and feeding it, I support my plants with organic nutrient supports every month to make sure that they're producing the best fruit possible for me.
Mm. So you still need to fertilize, but you're using like a organic fertilizer.
Mhm. 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 Or
I
you can
made
always take compost and top dress around the plants. I mean, there's tons of different, mushroom and all different kinds, and that's an easy way just to top dress and give it a little bit of little extra support.
So would you say part of your gardening is also having compost?
Yeah, you definitely can incorporate your own compost. I grow very large scale, so it's hard for me to keep up on that. But I do have composting systems because I think we eat so much vegetables. You hate to just throw that in the garbage can. So there's so many systems out there, from makeshift to actual bin rotation systems that you can purchase, and it's so much better for the planet.
Mm. Well, that's a really great point because one thing that I love about when whatever we do that's good for our health is also good for the planet's health. So we are making a difference in the planet. We're really taking care of us, we're also taking care of the planet in our
Mhm.
little patch of the world, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
yeah. Okay. So I know that you've got a free gift that you want to give the audience. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So I have a little herb guide that's free to you guys, and you can hop on my newsletter list and get tips and tricks every month. It's going to give you just some ideas of what herbs support, whether it's your digestive system or detoxing, how to use them, from teas to salad dressings to vinegars, and just to kind of broaden your horizons on different ways to incorporate them onto the plate or into your
Oh,
meals.
love that. I love that. Okay, so we've got the link there for it. And I always ask one final question for all of my guests, and that is what would you recommend as one thing someone could do today? So it can't be, planting the garden is kind of far off, but what could they do today to improve their health? And maybe it's still to do with gardening.
I would say even today is to make a plan, right? To make a plan, even if it's just to do a few little microgreens, you can do them in a solo cup. Like, it doesn't take much, but really think today, I'm going to start some microgreens. I have a pot in the garage. I'm going to sprinkle some lettuce seeds in. That is something most people can do today. You can get your hands on that really easily, and just to try to grow something.
Okay, you've inspired me. We actually did pick up our seeds, and so I'm going to get something planted today because we're
Good.
getting a little behind. Oh, I want to ask you about something else too. What you think? We've got one of those arrow gardens, which actually, it's a hydroponic unit. Have you heard of these? And
Mhm.
we've grown herbs and we've grown lettuces now this year. It's actually been pretty good. It's, handy. What do you think of those?
I think it's great. Any way that you can incorporate either extending your season by using a hydroponic system inside. I have some clients that will do that inside to kind of get them through the winter. I'm a proponent of, like, get creative, do what try new things, and whatever you can do to bring a little bit of that into your meals in your life, I think is a great thing. I mean, there's
Mm.
so many different ways to grow now that you should embrace it and do what you have fun doing. It should be enjoyable to you. I mean, that's the
Right.
other thing, is I want it to be enjoyable for people, and to get excited when you get to go harvest whatever it is, however you're growing it.
Mm. One of the big joys of gardening that I found is when everything's growing, you have kind of more than you may need. I love giving it to people, right? It's so nice to be able to give someone a bunch of carrots straight from your garden or some lettuces or whatever. It's really, that joy of giving, and that just feels so good in your heart, which is good for your health as well. So, yeah, that's another part of gardening that I find really joyful. So, Katie, is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you really want to make sure the audience hears?
I think we've covered everything. Again, I just want to reiterate to get out and just try it. The best way to learn is to learn on your feet. We can sit and watch YouTube videos and
Mhm.
take in a lot of content, but I really find that's more of a distraction than it is just to get out there and try, and to set the stage where I'm gonna have some wins and I'm gonna have some losses, and every year I'm gonna get better, and just get out there and get those hands dirty.
Love it. Yep. Get your hands dirty and grow some food. Katie, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for being a guest on Wellness by Design today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great talk.